Hello there, and welcome, or indeed welcome back to the World Storytelling Cafe. It's really, really great to be here. And when I say here, I'm not quite sure what I mean by that. When I say here, do I mean here on my sofa? In which case, yes, it is lovely to be here, as indeed it always is lovely to be on my sofa. But I suppose, in a way, I'm also on your sofa as well. In which case, thank you very much for having me. It's lovely to be here. So, I hope you're comfortable. I hope you're doing okay. It's a bit of a strange time we find ourselves in at the moment, isn't it? But I hope you're finding a way to connect with each other, be together, and share what you can, share the moments that you can. And so we're going to share a moment right now. So get yourself comfortable. I'm sort of approaching this very much as I might storytelling at a festival. So got myself a cup of tea. So do feel free if you need to pause and go and get yourself a cup of tea, or pop to the loo, or get yourself a snack or something, so you can just be comfortable. Well, seeing as it's a little bit of a festival feeling, I thought I'd make my living room look a little bit festival-y. So it's amazing what you can do with a throw and a couple of pashminas and some fairy lights. So yeah, I think I'm going to have it looking like this all the time. It does look rather nice. Anyway, so before we start, I think what I like to do normally before I tell a few stories is just to check that everyone's here. And obviously if we were all in the same room or the same tent or the same field together, maybe that might be a little bit easier to see who's here, or maybe not, I don't know. But obviously because you're there and I'm here, it's a little bit more tricky. So I tell you what, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for everyone to do a show of hands. I think we'll do jazz hands, actually. Yeah, if we can just do jazz hands if you're here. Okay, I'm going to see your jazz. You're not doing your jazz hands. Come on, jazz hands. Right, thank you. So jazz hands if you're here. Okay. Right, brilliant. Okay, and let's do maybe this. If you're not here, a bit of this. If you're not here, yeah, great. Okay, so you're not here, you're not here, you're not here. And you're not here. Oh, that's a shame. Oh, do you mind if we start without you? Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to share a few stories with you today. I never quite know what stories are going to pop into my head. So I've been kind of ruminating on this today, and I was thinking, over these last few days, it's been such a blessing to be able to go outside into the garden and go for appropriately socially distanced walks nearby, and I've just been so grateful to see everything around me, all of the spring that is springing up everywhere, the beautiful blue sky and the birds flying around, the buzzing of the bumblebees, and it made me think about this particular story which I'm going to share with you right now. And it goes like this. There was once a king, and the king, for some reason, was very, very, very sad. But the thing is, the king hadn't always been like this. In fact, there was a time when he'd actually been really quite a jolly fellow, quite a happy chap. In fact, he was quite the merry monarch. He was often seen riding out in his chariots among the local villages, smiling, giving out coins to the poor, giving lollipops to the children. But for some reason, over the last couple of years, a deep sadness and a deep sorrow had somehow settled itself in his heart, and nobody really knew why. The king didn't know why. And sometimes it's like that. Sometimes there is a sadness and we don't really know why it's there. Well, nobody wanted the king to be unhappy. And so everybody tried their best to cheer him up and make him feel better again. The palace cook had a few ideas. What the king needs, he said, is to have some dainty delicacies to tempt him, to tickle his palate. And so he set to preparing some of the most delicious food. Boiled peacock eggs on sourdough toast with sprinklings of the finest herbs. Delicate, sweet meringues that were as light as the tickle of a feather. Huge, great big bowls of sticky trifle with fruit and cream and jelly and all sorts of delicious stuff that normally the king used to love, but now, no matter what was put in front of him, he would just sigh, look upon the food, take a few spoonfuls, sigh again, sometimes look out of the window and sigh again. So it didn't seem like food was going to be the thing to cheer the king up. So next, the royal physician, the doctor, she had a few ideas. What the king needs is to have some kind of medicine to lift his heart and lift his spirits. And so she went out into the woods nearby, because the physician, she was a woman that knew more than just a thing or two about what kind of herbs would make the body and the soul and the heart well again. And so she collected all the things that she needed, gathered at the right time of the day, and then she brought them back to the palace. And there she made lotions and potions and unguents. I don't even know what unguents are, but it sounds good, doesn't it? And she made some wonderful, wonderful medicine for the king. And she took it to him. She poured some medicine onto a spoon and held it up to his mouth. Put it in his mouth and swallowed it down. It didn't taste bad. It tasted quite nice, actually. But it didn't make him smile. And it didn't lift his spirits, and it didn't lighten his heart. Well, what was to be done? Well, one day, the court wise man, he came up with an idea. What the king needs, he said, is music. I mean, who could fail to be stirred by beautiful music? And so it was that the king's herald went out into the marketplace and he made a great announcement. Whosoever can bring and play music to lift the heart of the king will receive riches beyond their wildest dreams. Well, as you can imagine, it wasn't long before there was a huge queue of musicians winding around the outside of the palace, carrying all sorts of instruments. Double basses and cellos, violas and violins, tambourines and triangles, drums, guitars, kazoos, and all of them hoping that they might be able to bring a smile to the king's lips and earn themselves some riches. Well, the first musician to be brought into the king's throne room was a harpist. She sat down at her harp and she played such beautiful music. And it brought to mind the sound of the whistling of the wind in the mountains and the rushing of the river. But the king just listened and he sighed and he sighed and he sighed some more. Well, the next to come into the throne room was a guitar player. He lifted his guitar and he strummed and he picked and he twanged and he played such music that, well, for most people they wouldn't be able to stop their feet from dancing and prancing across the room, but not the king. He just listened and he sighed some more. Next, there came a drummer. In fact, if you listen very carefully, you might just be able to hear the drummer now. My goodness. Oh, is that the drummer? Oh, I think actually that might be my next door neighbour's son practicing on his drums. Anyway, nothing wrong with a bit of background music. So the drummer came in and he drummed and he banged and he smashed those drums and he played out the most wonderful, wonderful rhythms. And it's the kind of rhythm that, well, you know, if you'd heard it and you'd been in a field at a festival somewhere, or you'd been at someone's party, you wouldn't have been able to stop your feet from stamping and jumping and stomping, and you'd be having a right good boogie. But not the king. He just sighed and sighed. And all day long, musician after musician after musician came into the palace. They played for the king. But none of them could bring a smile to the king's face. The sun set on that day, and they were all sent home. Well, just a couple of days later, news had found its way down into the valley, where there lived a young lad by the name of Gladheart. Now, Gladheart was the youngest of brothers. He had many, many brothers. And he lived with his brothers and his parents in a very small little cottage. Now, Gladheart and his family, they didn't really have very much. They didn't have a lot of space. Well, Gladheart, when he slept, he had to sleep squeezed into a tiny corner of the bed that he shared with his brothers. There was never very much to eat. A little crust of bread here, a crumb of cheese there. But Gladheart, as you may have realised from his name, was a very happy lad. And he was one of those people that, well, no matter what it was that came into his life, he would always find the joy in it. He was just that kind of boy. 10 years old he was. Well, one day, Gladheart heard the news about the king. And so, the next morning at breakfast, he announced to his brothers and his parents, he said, I am going to go to the palace and play for the king. Oh, his brothers started to laugh and guffaw and to chuckle. You go and play for the king? You're having a laugh, aren't you? And Gladheart said, well, I may be small, but you know, maybe there is something in my music that perhaps might gladden the king's heart. After all, my name is Gladheart. Gladheart by name, Gladheart by nature. Well, in the end, his brothers could see that he was quite determined, and his older brother offered to look after the goat herd for the day so that Gladheart could go to the palace. Well, when he arrived, he was met by 2 guards at the front gate. And when they heard that he wanted to play his music for the king, they started laughing just like his brothers had done. Ha 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 ha! You're just a slip of a boy. What kind of music could you possibly play that would be of any interest to the king? And Gladheart said, oh, I would just like to try, please. But the guards weren't convinced, and Gladheart knew that the only way that he could convince them to let him in would be to let them have a little listen of the music themselves. And so he lifted his fiddle and he lifted his bow and he started to play. And as he did, the most beautiful sounds came from that instrument. And the guards, when they listened to that sound, it seemed to stir something in them which had been long, long forgotten. Well, it wasn't long before the guards let down their guard and they let young Gladheart into the palace, and he was taken before the king. Well, the king sat there on his throne, as he did every day, looking glum, staring out of the window, sighing, sighing again. And he was only just aware, at the very edge of his hearing, at the sound of these footsteps coming into the throne room. But he felt so glum, he couldn't really bring himself to even look up. it was only when Gladheart announced his arrival with a little that he finally looked up and saw young Gladheart standing there in front of him. "If you please, Your Majesty, I would like to play for you." "As you wish," said the king. "As you wish." Well, Gladheart was feeling a little bit nervous now. He could feel his knees were beginning to tremble a bit. He could feel his hands were beginning to shake, and that wasn't very good if he was going to play the fiddle for the king. But he did something that his mum had taught him to do. He took 3 deep breaths. Maybe we could do that all together now. You see? I feel so much better already. I hope you do too. Well, so did Gladheart. Now he felt calm in his heart and in his body. And so he lifted his fiddle up and his bow, and then he started to play and play and play. And the sounds that came from that fiddle, they drifted through the air and they landed in the ears of the unhappy king. And as he listened, he felt that he could hear something that he hadn't heard for a long time. The sound of the birds singing in that particular way that they only do in the springtime. The sound of the bees buzzing in the blossom in that particular way that they only do in the springtime. And the sound of a stream dancing and singing as it makes its way through the land. The way the sound carries in that particular way that it only does in the spring. And so it was that a little tiny smidgen of a smile started to appear in the corner of the king's mouth. And then on the other corner, and before long, that smile was reaching right across his lips, stretching right across his face. And he smiled, and he smiled, and he sighed. But this time, it wasn't a sigh of sorrow. It was a sigh of joy and peace and contentment. "Oh, young man," said the king, "this song is beautiful. It reminds me of something that I heard long, long ago. What is this song? It's so beautiful." "This, Your Majesty," said Gladheart, "this is the song of the spring. It's a song that I learnt when I was standing in the field with my goats. It's the song that I learnt when the winter turned into spring, when the snows were melting into the land and the life was returning. If you like, Your Majesty, you can come every day and listen to this song with me and my goats." Well, the king thought that would be a splendid idea. And every day from that day forward, the king would go down into the valley and he would spend several happy hours with Gladheart and his goats, listening to that song of the spring, and it never failed to bring joy to his heart. And so, even though we might find ourselves in a time when perhaps we're spending a bit more time indoors than we often would, hopefully we'll be able to find time to go outside, maybe in a garden if you have one, into a park nearby if there's somewhere near, even just to stand outside your front door and just take time to see and to hear what's out there. And if you listen very carefully, I'm sure that you'll be able to hear the song of the spring. So, that's the end of my first story. I think my neighbour's son is still drumming away next door, but I think I'm quite happy with that. A little bit of background music. So what to tell next? Well, I think I'm going to tell a new story that I've never told before. Now, this story was given to me recently. I did some storytelling at the Norwich Institute of Language Education, and we had some students there from Switzerland. And there was a guy there, his name was Roland, and he told this story, and I've never heard this story before. But it's great, and I really enjoy it, and I've been really looking forward to a chance to tell it. So I'm going to tell it to you now. So this is the first time, you are the first people ever to hear this story. Very exciting. So our story begins with Mother Nature. Now, Mother Nature had been very, very busy creating. She had created this beautiful, beautiful earth. And she had created many beautiful plants and flowers, rivers and streams and oceans. And she had created animals too, out of that special magical stuff that animals are made out of, whatever that might be. Is it clay, or is it putty, or magical animal stuff? I'm not quite sure what it is. I'd have to speak to Mother Nature about that, I suppose. Well, she'd been very, very busy, especially working on all the animals. She'd been shaping and crafting and getting them all just right. You know, some of the animals were very, very, very small little beetles and ants and spiders. And some of the animals are really, really big, great big elephants and giraffes and lions, and some were kind of long and wiggly like snakes without any legs, and others had like loads of legs like the centipedes. And she made all of these animals, she crafted all of these animals, and she sat back and she looked at her handiwork and she thought, oh yeah, that looks really, really good. And she was very, very pleased with herself. But then there was a thought that struck her. And she couldn't believe it. She couldn't believe it, because when the thought came to her, suddenly it seemed so obvious, and she couldn't believe that she hadn't noticed before. And she thought, oh my goodness me, all of my animals are naked. All of the animals are naked. It's terrible. I can't have all these naked animals running around in the world. It just wouldn't be decent. And so she announced to all of the animals that they should all line up, and she would give them something to wear, some kind of special coat or plumage or something nice and slinky, whatever that might be. And so she got out her special bag, and all of the animals started to queue up. They all took their place: the elephant, the tiger, the zebra, the beetle, the cow. Right at the very, very back was the pig. Now, the pig had been a bit late coming to the line. In fact, he hadn't really heard the announcement because he'd been busy eating and stuffing his face, because that's kind of what pigs like to do. Anyway, the first of the animals, right at the front of the line, was the lion, the king of the jungle. He stepped forward, and Mother Nature said, "So, lion, what kind of coat would you like?" And the lion said, I think I would like some kind of sleek fur, sleek and golden, maybe with a little bit of a fancy fur on the end of my tail, and something a little bit special. I think I'd really like to have a nice big ruff coming out like this to make me look awfully, awfully grand, you know. After all, I am the king of the jungle and all that. Well, okay, yes, that's absolutely fine. And so Mother Nature, she reached down into her bag and she gave this lovely, sleek fur golden coat to the lion, with a nice little bit of detail on his tail, and this wonderful, beautiful golden ruff to go round his head like this. And oh my goodness, he looked so fine. He threw back his head and he went, "Rah!" And he felt really good. Should we all do that together? Should we all go, "Rah!" Oh, that was lovely. Well done. Fantastic. So the lion was happy, one very happy customer. Well, next to come up was the zebra. So, said Mother Nature, what kind of coat would you like? Well, said the zebra, I was thinking stripes would look lovely. Any particular colour? Oh, well, I was just thinking, keep it simple, classic black and white maybe. Black and white stripes it is. So Mother Nature, she took a lovely black and white stripy coat out of her bag and she presented it to the zebra, and the zebra put it on, and the zebra felt really good in her stripy coat. And off she walked. She felt very proud. Next in line was the leopard. Leopard steps forward. What would you like, says Mother Nature. Well, says the leopard, I was thinking, actually, I'd really like something a bit spotty. I've heard that all the best people are wearing spots these days. Right, spots it is then, says Mother Nature, and she gets a lovely spotty coat out for the leopard. But just before she gave it to him, she said, now, are you definitely sure that you want the spots? Because, once you've got the spots, you can't change them. You know what they say. Oh, yep, absolutely no problem, says the leopard. So he takes his lovely spotty coat, puts it on. Oh, he's very, very pleased with it. It looks absolutely fabulous. And so the day went on. All of the animals coming and getting. Some of them had feathers, beautiful feathers, and some of them had scales. And all the time that this was happening, poor old Pig, who was at the end, he was starting to get a little bit nervous. And well, the thing is, when Pig gets nervous, he kind of tends to comfort eat a bit. I know how he feels, really. I mean, I'm always reaching for the chocolate when I get nervous. Anyway, poor old Pig comes to the end of the line, and he's the only one left. And Mother Nature looks into her bag and she says, well, I'm afraid I haven't got anything left. Oh, you haven't got anything left? Oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to walk around and I'll be all naked. Oh, the shame. And Mother Nature, she couldn't bear it. She couldn't think of one of her animals to be sad like this. And she said, well, just wait a minute. Let me just see what I've got. And so she opened the case up and she looked inside, and there she found, well, it wasn't really a coat. All she had was the brush that she used for sweeping out her case when it was empty and it needed cleaning. And she said, but just give us a minute, I might just be able to improvise something with this. And so she took a pair of scissors and she started to snip, 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 and she chopped up the bristles off of the brush. And then she took a handful of bristles and she sort of placed them all over the pig's back. And it was a little bit itchy and a little bit poky and a bit scratchy, but actually, once they were in there, the pig sort of took a look at himself and he went, do you know what? I actually kind of like it. And I don't really mind this feeling of the breeze on my back. It actually feels quite nice. And so it was. The pig was actually quite happy with his new look. And that's why, from that day to this day, and forevermore, pigs have always been a little bit naked. Well, hope you enjoyed that one, and thank you to Roland from Switzerland for sharing that story with me, which I've shared with you. Now, before we go any further, and before I tell you my last story, I would just like to say, now, there is a great tradition among storytellers that after the teller has told their tale, that we pass the hat round, and anyone who's listened to and enjoyed those stories might just put their hands in their pocket and put a few coins into the hat for the tellers. Now, as you know, these are uncertain times for many of us, and many of us storytellers, we've had, we haven't got a lot of work on at the moment, so this is amazing that we're getting to tell stories here. So, if you do, even if it's just a couple of coins, if you're able to put them into the virtual hat, that would be fantastic. So, I'm going to tell you my last story now, but before I do, I'm going to need a little bit of help. So, I'm going to call on my daughter, Althea. I'm just going to see if she's around. because then she can come and she can help me to tell this story. I might have to just give her a shout. You can join in if you like and just call. So her name's Althea. So I'm just going to count to 3 and we can call for Althea. So 1, 2, 3, Althea. I can still just hear the drumming. I might just call it. Maybe just a little bit louder. 1, 2, 3. Althea. Let's try one more time. Anyone who knows anything about stories knows that everything happens in 3. Third time's a charm. Okay, here we go. After 3. 1, 2, 3. Althea! Oh, here she is. Marvellous. So I've been telling everyone that you're going to help me to tell this story. Mm-hmm. Yep. And in order to help tell this story, Althea is actually, you can't see it at the moment, but we're just going to show you in a sec that Althea is actually wearing a rather splendid piece of costume, which might give you a clue about what kind of role she's going to be taking on for this story. So there we go. Can you see this? There we go. This is a fishtail. A fishtail. Big flappy fishtail. There we go. Super. Right, so I'll see you in a moment. Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to tell this story, which I've been telling this story for quite a few years, and sometimes I tell it on my own, and sometimes I've told it with other storytellers. And I believe this story was told to me by a friend of mine called Steve Gladwin, who I first learnt storytelling from, really, when I was living down in Somerset many years ago. So thank you to Steve. And I always love telling this story, and I've heard many other storytellers tell this story, and there's all sorts of different versions, and it's a great story, and I hope you enjoy it. So this is a story about a fisherman and his wife. Now, this fisherman and his wife, they were very, very poor. They lived in an old tumbledown shack in the woods, and the woods were just at the edge of the beach. And every day the fisherman would go down to the sea and he would catch some fish, and then he'd bring it home to the old tumbledown shack. Now, let me just give you an idea about what that old tumbledown shack was like. You see, they were so poor. They had several holes in the roof where the rain would drip in when it was raining. And they were so poor that they only had one table and one chair. So when it came to meal times, they either had to take it in turns to sit down on the chair, or they had to share it one cheek each, which wasn't very comfortable. So you get the idea. They were very poor, but, you know, they were happy enough. They lived in a beautiful place. They loved living in the woods, at the edge of the beach, at the edge of the sea. And as I said, every day the fisherman would go down to catch some fish. Now, on one particular day, when he went down to the sea, he had no idea that their lives were just about to change. For he walked down to the sea, he took out his fishing rod, and he cast it out into the sea. And then he waited, and he waited, and he waited to see if he would catch a fish, and then all of a sudden, he felt a tug on his line, and he tugged, and he tugged, and he tugged, and whoo! The fish came flying out of the sea.
Hello.
Did you just say hello?
Yes.
Oh my goodness me. It's a talking fish. A talking fish. And then the talking fish started to plead with the fisherman.
Please don't eat me.
Well, I'm a fisherman, and if I don't take fish home for my wife, well, why shouldn't I eat you?
I'm not a fish. I'm actually a princess, and a witch cast a spell on me.
Oh. Well, when you put it like that, it seems like it would be wrong. I mean, what would you do? You know, if a fish had just spoken to you, I mean, you wouldn't really want to eat it, would you? It would just feel a bit wrong. And so the fisherman decided to do the right thing, and he released the fish back into the sea.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. And then he went home. And when he arrived home and he walked into the tumbledown shack, his wife was standing there, and she saw him walking in empty-handed, and she went, "Woohoo! Where where's the fish? Where's our supper? Ah, well, the thing is, said the fisherman, well, I caught this fish, but it was a most unusual fish. You see, it started talking to me and it told me it was an enchanted princess. And, well, you know, after it had been talking, I didn't feel like it would be right to bring it home and cook it for our tea. Oh, goodness me, said his wife. Did you ask it for a wish? Well, no, I didn't ask it for no wishes. I should have done. Oh, my goodness, you are a fool, my man. She said, everybody knows that talking fishes can grant wishes. You should have asked it for a wish. Look, why don't you go back down to the sea and see if you can catch the fish and then ask it if we can have a wish. All right then, what shall I ask for? Well, said the fisherman's wife, I'm fed up with living in this old tumbledown shack. I really would like something a little bit more comfortable. Ask the fish if we can have a nice little cottage with roses growing around the door and a veggie patch in the garden and a nice comfy sofa with a ginger cat on it. Go on then. So the fisherman went back down to the sea and he called out. In fact, you might like to join in this little ditty with me if you like. It goes, flounder, flounder, flounder fish. My wife would like a little wish. Should we try it together? And we'll see if we can summon up a talking fish. Flounder, flounder, flounder fish. My wife would like a little wish. And there came the fish, jumping out of the water. Hello.
Hello.
My wife says that talking fishes can grant wishes. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, in that case, we'd like to wish for a nice cottage with roses growing all around the door and a nice veggie patch out in the garden and a comfy sofa with a ginger cat. Would that be all right?
Go home and we shall see what we shall see.
Oh, thank you very much.
Good day.
Good day. And the fish jumped back in the water. Well, the fisherman went back home and, oh my goodness, to his great surprise and delight, he found his wife standing outside a beautiful little cottage just like the one that she'd wished for, with the roses around the door and the veggies in the garden. And when he walked inside, the comfiest of sofas and the cuddliest of ginger cats. And his wife sat down on the sofa with the ginger cat on her lap. And the fisherman sat down next to her and he said, oh, my dear, my darling. He said, oh, this is lovely, isn't it? Isn't this lovely? Oh, you must be so happy. And the fisherman's wife, she said, well, I am very happy. I mean, it is a lovely cottage. But the thing is, I was just thinking, you know, lovely as it is still a little bit small, and maybe it might be nicer to have something just a little bit bigger. And actually maybe something that's, you know, a bit closer to town, a townhouse perhaps, you know, with a few rooms so we could have guests, en suite. Ooh, maybe one of them widescreen tellies as well. Why don't you go back down to the sea and ask your fish if we can have that? A nice townhouse. Go on, off you pop. And so off went the fisherman back down to the sea. And he called out again to summon the talking fish. Can you remember how it goes? Flounder, flounder, flounder fish. My wife would like a little wish. After 3. 3. Flounder, flounder, flounder fish. My wife would like a little wish. And up came the fish out of the sea. Hello.
Hello.
My wife was just wondering, I mean, she's loving the cottage, you know, it's great. We're really liking the cottage there. But I'm just wondering whether it might be possible to maybe go for a townhouse, you know, something a little bit bigger, a few rooms so that we can have some guests, you know, en suite in the bedrooms, maybe one of those widescreen tellies. Would that be possible?
Go home and we shall see what we shall see.
Thank you very much.
Good day.
Good day. And off went the fish. Well, the fisherman went back home and, oh my goodness, to his surprise and delight, he found his wife standing outside this lovely townhouse. She took him inside, showed him around, gave him the tour. There was the widescreen telly, nice big recliner sofa there was as well. quite a few rooms, all with en-suite, so they could have guests, they could have dinner parties and stuff. Well, fisherman quite liked it, really, thought he could get used to this. Well, after they'd watched a film on the big widescreen telly later, they sat back on the nice comfy recliner sofa, and the fisherman looked at his wife and he said, "Oh, my dear, my darling, the love of my life." He said, "This is lovely, isn't it?" I said, "You must be ever so happy with all of this." And the fisherman's wife said, "Well, the townhouse is very nice, but, you know, I was kind of thinking, I mean, having dinner parties and a few guests is all very well, but wouldn't it be nice if we had even more space? You know, then we could have big parties then, and we could invite all of our friends. Wouldn't that be wonderful? I tell you what would be really nice, maybe a mansion. We could have a mansion, or we could have big gardens, maybe with a fountain in the garden. Oh, and maybe we could have our own chef so that he could make lovely food when all our guests come. How about that? A celebrity chef, that Gordon Ramsay fellow. Mind you, he is a bit sweary, but I do think his food's quite nice. Go on, off you pop, go and ask that talking fish." So off went the fisherman back down to the sea, and he called out once more, all together, "Flounder, flounder, flounder fish, my wife would like a little wish." And there came the fish, jumping out of the sea. Hello.
It's you again. Hello.
Hello. Yes, me again. Yes, my wife, well, she's quite enjoying the not the man, she hasn't got that yet, has she? She's enjoying the townhouse, but she was just wondering if maybe we could have something a little bit bigger, maybe a mansion, a few more rooms, you know, so we could have a few more guests, we could have some parties, fountain in the garden, oh, and a celebrity chef. She wants that Gordon Ramsay. I've heard he swears a lot though. Maybe Jamie Oliver, not that fussy really, as long as they make nice food. Would that be all right?
Go.
Our fish has got a bit of the giggles there, hasn't it?
Go home and we shall see what we shall see.
Thank you very much.
Good day.
Bye-bye. And so the fisherman went back home, and well, to his surprise and delight, he found his wife standing outside a mansion, a huge mansion with many rooms. There was a great big function room where they could have dancing, and there was a huge dining room where all their guests could eat delicious food prepared for them by I don't know, maybe Gordon Ramsay or Jamie Oliver, not sure which one it was. I think I'd prefer Jamie actually. Anyway, that's by the by. Well, the fisherman was taken in by his wife and given the tour, and he was given the tour of the gardens with all the fountains, and oh, so lovely. And later on that evening, as they were walking around the garden, just as the sun was setting, and they were walking around with a nice little glass of chilled Chardonnay in their hand, the fisherman said to his wife, "Oh, my dear, my darling, the love of my life, you must be the happiest woman alive." And she said, "Well, the mansion's very nice, but I still don't think it's quite big enough, actually. In fact, I would like something quite a bit larger. In fact, I think I'd like to live in a palace. And in fact, if I'm living in a palace, well, that means I'm going to have to be the queen. And I'm going to have a big crown and a throne. And I'm going to have lots of servants. And they're going to have to do my nails and do my hair and bring me lots of lovely clothes and all that sort of stuff. Why don't you go and ask your fish if we can have that?" Go on then, off you pop. And so the fisherman once more, he went back down to the sea, and he called out, "Flounder, flounder, flounder fish, my wife would like a little wish." Not so little anymore though, is it? And up came the fish out of the water. Hello.
It's you again. Hello.
Fish is starting to look a little bit annoyed now. My wife was just wondering, I mean, you know, the mansion's all very nice, and that's very nice, thank you very much, but, well, she was just wondering if maybe we could have something a bit bigger, maybe a palace, and she could have a crown, because obviously she'd be the queen, and a throne to sit on, and people to come and do her nails, and bring her clothes and food and that. Would that be possible?
Go home and we shall see what we shall see.
Okay. Thanks then.
Good day.
Good day. Bye-bye. So the fisherman went home, and oh my goodness me, the sight that did await him when he got there. An enormous palace with turrets and flags fluttering in the breeze. A drawbridge that was lowered down so that he could enter into the castle, and there was his wife, the queen, sitting there with her crown upon her head, sitting on her throne. She had servants running here and there, bringing her food and drink, doing her nails, showing her beautiful outfits for her to wear. And she was thoroughly enjoying herself. But later on that evening, as they sat next to each other on their matching thrones, the fisherman leaned over to his wife and he said, "Oh, my dear, my darling, the love of my life. Surely you must be the happiest woman alive." And she said, "Well, this is very nice, really, but the thing is, earlier on, I was looking out of the window and I saw that the sun was setting in the sky, and I thought to myself, I'm not ready for the sun to go down yet. In fact, I want it to be light for quite a bit longer. In fact, I want to be able to tell the sun when it's going to set and when it's going to rise. I want to decide exactly whereabouts the moon is going to be in the sky and where the stars should be positioned around it. In fact, I would like to be the ruler of the universe." "Go on. Go and tell your fish that that's what I want." So the fisherman, because he did love his wife, went back down to the sea and he called out, "Flounder, flounder, flounder fish, my wife would like a great big wish." And the fish came jumping out of the water. Fish wasn't impressed. "My wife, she's enjoying the palace and all that and being queen, but she was just wondering whether it might be possible for her to be able to be the one to tell the sun when it goes down and when it comes up and where the moon's going to go and the stars and everything. And would that be all right?"
Go home and we shall see what we shall see.
Okay.
Good day.
Good day. And so the fisherman went home to his wife. Truth be told, he did feel a little bit nervous. But when he got there, he found her standing outside the hovel, their old tumbledown shack that they'd started in before all this business with talking fishes granting wishes had begun. She didn't look very happy. But then, as the days passed, she started to realise that maybe she had asked for a bit too much. I mean, personally, myself, I would have stopped at the mansion. I mean, nobody really needs to be the ruler of the universe, do they? But hey. But as the days passed, she did start to realise that actually, really what they had was enough. They had the woods, they had the beach, they had the sea, they had the changing of the seasons all around them. They had enough food for their bellies. And most of all, they had their love for each other. And what could be more precious than that? And that is the end of my story. Thank you very much. Round of applause for the fish, I think. A good story for these times, I think. We find ourselves at these times with everything being somewhat stripped down to the bare essentials, and it does actually maybe make us think about what really matters. And perhaps, when everything starts to slow down a bit, when we're not flying here and there and endlessly consuming, that actually maybe it's a time for the world to be able to take a breather and to recover. And maybe a time for us to reflect on how much we really, really need. So, this has been delightful. It's been really lovely to share some stories with you. I really look forward to doing it again. And maybe one day we'll actually meet in a field or a room in a tent. And that would be lovely too. But in the meantime, keep coming to the World Storytelling Cafe. If you've enjoyed our story, if you've enjoyed the stories that I've told to you today, then just at the bottom here, there is a virtual hat that you can chuck a few coins in. And do that for any of the storytellers that you hear stories from here at the World Storytelling Cafe. So I'm going to say goodbye now, but it's been lovely to share stories with you, and I hope to see you another day. Go well. Take care of each other.